All right, welcome into another edition of Carps Corner. Sorry, been away for a while, been traveling a ton. My goodness, going back to Atlanta for the Peach Bowl, then going to LA for the national championship. I went to Hawaii for an NFL event out there with the troops during the Super Bowl, then was on the Buckeye Cruise, which we'll get into some of that. And now ultimately I'm going to be going to the Bahamas for spring break for the kids. I don't normally travel like this. This has been terrible. I have not enjoyed it, but here we are. This is what we're doing. And, there's a couple practices before spring ball we're going to break down. And then ultimately we'll talk a little bit looking forward about what to expect from spring ball. Some of these different position battles, and we'll start diving into some of them more individually as we get rolling into this. I mean, obviously the quarterback battle is big. We can get into all that a little bit, but I want to save that for more down the line. Offensive line, that's going to be big, replacing 3 guys. And so I want to see more guys. They haven't really had the pads on yet there, but you've got some movement in the linebacker room potentially. I mean, even with Steele and Tommy coming back, CJ Hicks, what his role is going to look like, what are they going to ultimately do with Jim Knowles, what he was saying with Jack Sawyer on the edge in the jack position. Got some news about NFL free agency and how that ultimately looks. And then ultimately too, James Laurinaitis has been at Ohio State now for a little bit of time. He's been out there for a couple of practices, and what has kind of been his tangible impact and how has that ultimately looked as well. So there's a lot of stuff here, plus some NFL free agency news with regarding former Buckeyes. So I want to start out with this because I haven't really addressed it yet. Buckeye Cruise went off 16th year of the cruise. It was absolutely tremendous. Went to a smaller boat this year. I think a lot of people liked it. Went to some great stops. Raised $4.3 million for the James Cancer Hospital, which was tremendous. I love being on there because I love to catch up with my guys, AJ and Schlegs. I get to see a lot of them, a decent amount of time, but very rarely without the kids and more of an adult vacation. You're relaxing, you have dinners, you hang out, you do your events together, and it's just a lot of fun. It's like being back in college. And so when I was younger, I liked it. As I've gotten older, like you really need it because it's a way to connect back to guys who you played with. And then also you get a chance to hang out with Tom Kuzno and Ryan Miller, guys who played 10 and 25 years ahead of me. And then getting a chance to be around Josh Perry, who've got to know really well, Ryan Shazier, who's a little older than him, Raekwon McMillan, who I look back, I mean, he's a little more than 10 years younger than me. So those guys, and then they had current players on for the first time. And sorry, I just mentioned the linebackers because those are the guys who I like to chill with. But I had a great time, man. Excited for Raekwon still playing with what he's able to do. Ryan doing great things. Then obviously Joshua was on BTN and crushing on Bally's as well. But current players going on this. So we had Cade Stover, tight end, Mecca Ibuka, obviously wide receiver, and then Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. And so to get a chance to sit down and hang out with those dudes, it's great because Tommy, Cade, and Steel all live together. I've been around Mecca a ton in the weight room. He doesn't really talk a lot, but he's got a big personality. When he's working out, he's all business. But him and Tommy battling shoulder surgeries they've been recovering from. So they'll be obviously limited in the spring, and we'll get into some of that and how that'll impact, the rotation there during spring. But hanging out with Tommy, seeing his personality, Steele, who's got the biggest personality of them all, Cade, his dry humor. They did a great event called, How Well Do You Know Your Teammates? And they've been doing this stuff for a long time. They did it like 15 years ago with Schlegs, AJ, myself, I think Doug Daddis. There was like a handful, Mangold, like 5 of us up on stage, did it. And Cam Babb, gosh, I forgot Cam Babb because he's kind of current, but not really. He's just finishing up. But the other 4 will be coming back. But they had those 5 guys on stage. And then they had an iteration with like Hireman and Joshua Perry, I think, Eli Apple, Zeke, a bunch of those guys, about 7 years ago. And that was good. But these guys really hit a home run. They showed their personalities. They were very gracious. Everybody loved them. You got to see a little look into what it's like to be a player and get to understand those guys a little better. So, man, it was just absolutely awesome to see those guys and how well they were able to do. on the cruise. Like I said, raised 4.3 million. Some for, Ryan Day was on the boat. Herbie was on the boat as well. Jim Tressel, first time on the boat, which I'll get his speech and stuff posted up into YouTube and everything on the channel here, because he was so good. So good. We had an awesome surprise for him. We'll get into that. But, Ryan was awesome. He was excellent, and he was pumped there. But, some money went to, a lot of it goes to James Cancer, but some goes to the Ryan Nina Day Foundation. I think we got some raised for NIL. So a lot of things getting done, but $4.3 million. Start with Tress, because him coming on the boat was a home run. They've been trying to get him for years. He's always so busy. Finally retired. Now him and Ellen came on, and we had an unbelievable retirement party for him. It was a surprise. Schlegs and I got to introduce him. It was honestly one of the toughest speeches, and I fortunately get a chance to talk a lot in life, but one of the toughest speeches I've ever had to give, because you get one shot at it. He's your coach. He's retiring, and there's 600 Buckeyes there that are hanging on every word, ready for you to get to him. And just to adequately describe what he's done for the state of Ohio, for Ohio State football, and for all of his former players, it's almost incomprehensible. So to try to quantify that in a couple minutes is really hard. And people said I did a good job. So hopefully I landed the plane on that. It was not easy. And it's definitely an emotional experience for me, just for everything he's done in my life. And for me being a young man who thought he knew everything at 19 years old, to graduating from there, thinking I still knew everything, to by the time I was 30, realizing that he had taught me a lot, and the way to look at things, and just, he asks great questions about what you're doing in life. Even if he doesn't know a lot about the topic, he always asks really insightful questions that get you to think introspectively about it. So he was there. He was great. Ryan was fantastic. Him and Herbie had a great sit down that was really, really good. That they did a really good job on that. So that was tremendous. So the cruise was honestly just a home run. So going to get into some little bit of, Buckeye transitioning news here. Zeke released from the Dallas Cowboys, 8,200 yards in his career and his 7 seasons with Dallas. Third all-time leading rusher in Cowboys history, behind Emmitt Smith and Tony Dorsett. Jerry spoke glowingly about him. Zeke was on the boat. He was his normal gregarious self, big personality, was absolutely tremendous. Really, really enjoyed him, as I always do, and just sad to see his tenure go. And I was just talking to my wife here this week about, hey, do we get back to Dallas? We haven't been there for a while. I know they love to see Zeke play, down there. We get him to a game, and I don't know if he finds his way back. I was hoping they'd be able to find some common ground on a salary restructure. Obviously it didn't happen. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Maybe he comes back. I believe the door is closed based upon what Jerry said. Just, I'm sure Zeke will get more money to go somewhere else, and I get it. But he's been a huge impact on that franchise, and just played injured, played tough, did a lot of great things. Michael Thomas restructuring his contract, basically a 1-year deal for $10 million. And Michael Thomas, through his first three and a half seasons, 4 years, was the most dominant receiver in NFL history. And he had Drew Brees. Well, and since then he's been injured. It's been kind of a hee-haw fest with the quarterback situation, and Sean Payton not being there obviously doesn't help. But now they got Derek Carr coming in. So I think this could be a huge, huge opportunity. You've got Chris Olave down there. You've got Michael Thomas, Derek Carr, who's accurate, who can push the ball down the field, bigger than Drew Brees, but shares a lot of similar traits to how they play. So I'm really excited for Mike and what he's able to do. And I think this will be a huge year for him. I think it could be a big year for the Saints, because their division is not very good, and Derek Carr makes them a ton better than Jameis Winston and what they've been trying to do down there, at their quarterback situation. So it's a much better situation for him with a quarterback that can accurately throw the ball with timing and rhythm, because that's what Michael Thomas needs. Because he's not a big separation guy, but he needs someone to accurately put it in a place he can go get it, and he should be able to get it now. Big debate, especially with Carolina trading up to the number 1 spot with Chicago, which means number 1, Chicago's sticking with Justin Fields. They got DJ Moore and a ton of draft capital. So hopefully they'll be able to help Justin Fields and continue his development into his 3rd season at Chicago, which I think is going to happen. I don't know if Justin will ever be the best quarterback in the NFL, but he possesses elite traits. He's starting to see the field better. They need to be able to develop a little bit of a running game, and they need to protect him. And if you do that, I think you'll be able to see the best of Justin Fields, which I think can be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL and someone that can give you Super Bowl aspirations. So hopefully that's the case. But Carolina's number 1. Indy's still sitting at 4. You have Atlanta, I believe, at 3. And so it comes down to, do you like Bryce or do you like CJ? Because I'm not a big believer in Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. I think those guys, elite traits as far as arm strength, athleticism, and all that stuff. But as far as accuracy and playing the quarterback position, throwing with timing and rhythm, it's CJ and it's Bryce. Now, Bryce is smaller. He moves better. CJ's bigger, doesn't move quite as well. Maybe a little better pure thrower of the football, but Bryce is pretty darn good too. I think CJ ultimately goes number 1 to Carolina. I just have that feel about it. I know, Frank Reich is down there. He's been hyping up Anthony Richardson, and they've talked about Bryce Young. From what he has, from probably what he likes as a quarterback with the offense he wants to run, I think CJ checks all those boxes for him. And so I would think that CJ right now, as of today, on my anniversary, March 15th, the Ides of March, I think that he's leaning into CJ Stroud. That's my gut. That can change, but that's where we're at right now. So that's some good stuff there. It'd be awesome for Ohio State to have a guy go number 1 overall. And a quarterback go to a situation I think could be pretty good. Gave up some draft capital to go get him, but I think it could be a really, really good situation. Now we got some sound here that we're going to be able to listen to from Ryan Day and Jim Knowles about some guys and some of the young wide receivers, Jordan Hick or CJ Hicks, rather, Sonny Styles, some of the young defensive guys there. Talk a little bit about James Laurinaitis and what he's all about and everything he's got going. But I want to start with this, and I'll throw this up here. Jim Knowles saying that Jack Sawyer now is not going to play Jack anymore. He's going to exclusively play defensive end. Obviously, JT Tuimoloau. And that's big because Ohio State, they really don't want to do a lot of 3-down stuff. They'll do some, but they want it to be more of a change-up. When he was at Oklahoma State, they started getting to a lot of 3-down stuff. And the film that I watched, they were very multiple. And Jack Sawyer gives you that. But you want him on the field all the time. He's a really, really good player. And so you don't want him only getting 30% of the snaps. He's a guy that needs to now be getting 70% of the snaps, 65% of the snaps in the game, and developing his pass rush, being a bookend there opposite of JT. And so you're not going to play him at Jack. And so with that, question then becomes, who's going to play that Jack position? I think the guy they'll probably pencil in there, second-year player who's made a ton of plays, who's really versatile as well, is Caden Curry. I really like Caden Curry. He's a very fluid rusher. He's natural. He doesn't always look the prettiest, but he always seems to be around the ball and beat guys. He was always scooping up fumbles, causing fumbles, all kinds of stuff last year during camp. So excited to see him in the spring. That's my hunch is where that's going to go. They're probably going to try some guys and let them see if they can grow into that position. But I think Caden Curry will probably get the first crack at it. James Laurinaitis, the effect that he's had. So he's got a couple spring ball practices under his belt. He's been sitting in meetings now, running with the guys. He's basically running the linebacker room and freeing up Jim Knowles to be able to oversee a lot of things. And that's really big because talking with some of the guys, it's tough when you have a coach, who's really smart, but when you're still a developing player, you got to understand that there's theory on the board and then there's reality. And, and James understands like every player is different. And Fick was great at teaching this. Like, Bobby, you have this, and AJ, you have that, and James, you have this, Marcus, you have this, and Schlegs, you have that. And like, these are what your gifts are that God's given you, whether it's your length, your speed, your strength, your vision, whatever, quickness, whatever it might be. So when you're attacking blocks or going through plays, like, hey, I did it like this. I've seen other guys do it like that. Why don't you try this way to attack the block or this way to play the play based upon the skills that you possess? And so like listening and talking, to Tommy and Steele and some of those guys where James can give them different tools and be like, I did it like this. You may want to do it like that. And the guy who's been there and has seen it, like, hey, if you want to come underneath this block, that's great. You better make the play because you got 10 other guys counting on you to do it. I know you're supposed to go over the top, but you see things differently. You fit them on the run. And there was just a positivity and like how excited they are and how excited I think, that Tommy and Steele and then Cody as well, Simon will get better this year. Just having somebody that understands and has played it at a really high level and really understands football at an elite level. So the James Laurinaitis effect, I think, is going to be huge with what they've got. Now, we're going to get into some sound here as well. And so we're going to start off with Jim Knowles talking about Sonny Styles, and Ryan Day talked about him too. Like they were glowing in their endorsements of Sonny Styles because Sonny is an elite athlete. And honestly, coming in, I didn't know as a senior who reclassified to number one, have the physical ability to do it, which he does, which is just surprising because it's very rare that anybody could do that. Maurice Claret was probably the only guy who I thought could have come in and played early like that, as a senior in high school. But Sonny had that ability, and they put him in the game, and he was in there playing against Georgia. But then also the mental capacity, not just to understand the defense, but the psyche, be able to ride the highs and lows of college football, man. It's hard because you're going to get beat. And when you're a great player, you're not used to getting beat. But how do you learn from it? How do you get back into it? How do you handle it? And Sonny can do a lot of things. And this is Jim Knowles talking about that versatility.
Yeah, I think when you look at the potential best 11 players, for the 2023 defense, I mean, he's a guy that our staff is going to point at and say, we need to find a way to get him in there. He held his own in the semifinal, and I think he's just got all kinds of skills. So, yeah, we got to experiment with him in different places, see what's best for Sonny and our defense, but he's definitely on our mind, and he will be all spring in terms of getting him into a position that's effective, for the defense.
Because here's the thing about Sonny. He can play in the box, he can play deep, he can probably cover guys in the slot. I mean, he's 225, he's 6'3", looks like he's thinking linebacker, but he runs like a safety. And so how they deploy him and what they're able to do is going to really open up this defense. But he's a guy they're going to get on the field. I promise you that. Sonny Styles will see a lot of game reps this year, and I'm excited this spring to kind of see how they deploy him. Now, the other guy that needs to have a huge spring is CJ Hicks. CJ Hicks, an elite 5-star player, came in, he's shown flashes, and he's really a great team guy. You've seen him flash on special teams, and he's done some things that have been very impressive. Now, consistency for young guys is always a part of it, and this is a huge offseason for him. Good winter, going to have a huge spring, because if you prove to the coaches you can get on the field, they'll put you out there. They'll find packages and find ways to get you onto the football field. And so CJ needs to show that and earn that trust that down in and down out, I can be a dude that makes plays for you. And you can rotate me in there with Tommy. You can rotate me in there with Steele. I can be a third backer sometimes. I can be a rush guy. I can do different stuff because he has all of these elite physical traits. Let's hear Jim Knowles talk about it.
CJ, great athlete, really good kid, good energy, good team guy. And I think that is worth saying, right? Because when you're 5-star and Mr. Everything, I think it's challenging to come into a top 5 program and not play right away. But he handled it really well. CJ's situation is different because there's a couple guys coming back. There's a lot of experience there. He plays in a position that's closer to the ball. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's some learning, in terms of all the schemes and all the different fits that you get as a linebacker. If you're up front, you're attacking, you can get in pretty early in your career. And if you're on that back end, you have space and distance and all that to figure it out. So I'm really just looking for improvement from CJ.
You heard a lot there. Great athlete, great team guy, handles adversity well. And that's key because it's frustrating coming in and not playing right away when you're used to being the man. And so people talked about him transferring this, that, and the other. CJ's come in, he's worked hard. And I hope that he learns and sits there not behind, but watches Tommy and Steele and how those guys lead this year. So that's big because next year he's going to be the man. And so he's got to develop, and not just his physical abilities and getting on the field, but next year he's going to have to be ready to step in as a leader. And it's hard to do that as a junior, a third-year guy, but he's going to need to do that. Now, Ryan Day talking a little bit about some of the talent they have. Thin at corner right now. It was important. They brought in a transfer, and we've talked about it. David Igbeneusen, coming in from Ole Miss, freshman, really talented player, All-American, guys from Jersey. That was important because J.K. Johnson left, and J.K. went down to LSU, goes to Louisiana. Good for him. If you don't want to be here, okay. And I really like J.K., but bringing in David, this is going to be big. His length, his physicality. Ryan Day spoke on that and what he could mean to the secondary.
Physicality you see for sure. You can see even today, I saw a couple have to watch the film where he got his hands on guys, and that length, like you said, once you get your hands on, when you have that type of length, it makes it hard for the receiver. Also, being a zone corner and having that type of length and size allows you to cover more ground and get your hands on more balls. So, and for him, he's got experience playing in the SEC as a freshman. So, I think that helps with his confidence.
Yeah, I mean, he possesses all that stuff, and he's going to have to be somebody that pushes and competes for playing time. They've got some talent back there. They got Denzel Burke, you got Jaylen Brown, they got Jordan Hancock. I mean, they've got some talented players here, but he's going to have to step up and be a part of it and be in the mix. And then the last part, probably the most talented position group at Ohio State, and it's generally that case every year. It's going to be a little different this year because, Julian had shoulder surgery. Mac had shoulder surgery. Marvin, they're obviously going to limit his reps, and he's going to get a lot of individual work, but, develop some rapport, with Devin Brown and Kyle McCord, but him and Kyle were high school teammates anyway. He knows the offense. You want to get him work and develop and polish his skills, but you want to get these young guys some reps. So all the young receivers that came in, they're making their push, and they're excited about it. And this is Ryan talking about the competition in that room.
The truth is they're going to get really pushed by this freshman group. The three guys that came in have made an impact. We've been very impressed with them, and then Brandon coming in the summer. So, this is going to be a really good opportunity with Emeka out, Julian out. We're going to be smart with X and with Marvin. Those guys have played a lot of football. So, like you said, what an unbelievable opportunity for all those guys to step in and play. And so this is a very, very big spring for them.
And that competition is key because it pushes the older guys, and they're going to Hartline. I mean, he's going to roll those guys through if they prove they can play. If they prove they can be out there and you can handle it, they'll get them in there. They have 3 elite dudes at the top. They've got a whole crop of guys coming in. They've got some guys, let's not forget Xavier Johnson, as well, and what he's been able to do and how much they relied on him, obviously, against Georgia in the Peach Bowl due to injury. So they've got some reliable pieces, and it's going to be fun in the spring watching these young guys go and battle against young corners to see what they can do with young quarterbacks. This is going to be awesome. Really excited for this spring. Get you a spring ball update next week. They get out practice Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, mostly the last week, I think, will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then they'll have the spring game, obviously, following that. But it's going to be a really big spring in a lot of ways. Line, quarterback, secondary, young receivers battling, going to be fun. Going to be really, really fun to be able to watch that. So excited to kind of see how all that shakes out. And then even tight end, watching with Joe Royer and seeing what he can do. But that's it for this edition of Carps Corner, Bobby Carper Show. Thank you for tuning in. We have more, get you juiced up for the spring as we go through. So like, subscribe, please shoot me your comments. We'll get the mailbag fired up, and I'll be able to answer some more of your stuff. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.